front to say Taiwan is part of China if the United States had to switch diplomatic recognition from Taiwan to China in 1979?
We operate under the auspices of our One China policy.
So
yes.
can I just make sure I understand this? So there is absolutely no change in policy towards Taiwan and China based on. So why was it updated? Why did it change the language?
Matt, you know as probably better than most that
I know very well, but you know what? I also know that anything having to do with Taiwan is anathema to any change, even if it's a comma in a sentence, is going to get Beijing's attention, and they're going to be unhappy about it. So why now? Why was the decision made to change the fact sheet? And if there's no change, then why change the fact sheet?
The fact sheet had not been updated in several years. You know that our fact sheets are regularly updated. I think we care most about ensuring that our relationships around the world are reflected accurately in our fact sheets. I don't think we're as concerned as to what other countries might latch onto in an effort to create a pretense.
As you know, and as you guys had previewed, the Secretary was supposed to give a speech this week about U.S.-China policy. And of course, he had to postpone it because of his COVID. Was this fact sheet updated in anticipation, or was it mistakenly updated?
No, it wasn't a mistake. We intend.
It was going to be, yeah, but was it going to be updated in conjunction with the speech that he was going to?
This was not a policy rollout. This, believe me or not, this was really just a technical update to a fact sheet. Our policy has not changed.
But the language in it has changed, correct?
The substance has not changed. The policy has not changed.
The language in it has changed, and we all know that language means things, that words mean things, right? So there was, essentially you're saying there was no reason at all. The previous language could have stood and it would still be viable.
I invite you rather than just say words have changed to offer examples of what might be different. And you will find that our underlying policy has not changed. The fact sheet makes very clear that our One China policy has not changed. It remains guided by the Taiwan Relations Act, the 3 joint communiques, and the 6 assurances. Yes.
And on Russia, Ukraine, let me start with the Secretary's statement on cyber activity. Can you tell us more about your findings? Any, let's say, indication to Russia's increased capabilities that would tell other countries, like, you know, immediate neighbors, that they are much more vulnerable than they used to be? If you talk to anyone in Georgia, Estonia, they will tell you, we told you so years ago, you never listened to us. But what does it tell you about Russia's capabilities right now? And also, secondly, I think the Secretary mentions new mechanisms to help Ukraine to detect and also to protect from Russian cyber attacks. Any additional details about that?
Sure. So on your second question first, and I'll get to today's announcement. But we have worked very closely with our Ukrainian partners in recent years, including in the months preceding Russia's invasion of Ukraine, to bolster their cyber capabilities. And so when we talk about some of the attacks that took place against Ukrainian systems, including these DDoS attacks that took place in the days and weeks prior to Russia's invasion, we've made the point, and our Ukrainian partners, more importantly, have made the point that their systems were back up, fully running, fully operational, in many cases within hours. And that is a testament to Ukraine's capabilities in the cyber realm. It's a testament to its ability, to its cyber resilience, to its ability to weather such operations. And we have been quite instrumental in helping Ukraine get to that point. Now, what we said today, and we did this in tandem with allies and partners in Europe is to publicly share our assessment that Russia launched cyber attacks in late February against commercial satellite communications networks in an effort to disrupt Ukrainian command and control during the invasion, and that those efforts did have spillover effects into other European countries. The activity disabled very small aperture terminals, or VSATs, in Ukraine and across Europe. This includes tens of thousands of terminals outside of Ukraine that, among other things, support wind turbines and provide internet services to private citizens, essentially serving as a link between satellites in the sky and systems on the ground. We and our partners are taking steps to help defend against Russia's irresponsible actions. We've identified new mechanisms to help Ukraine identify cyber threats and recover from cyber incidents, precisely what I was referring to a moment ago. We've also enhanced our support for Ukraine's digital connectivity, including by providing satellite phones and data terminals to Ukrainian government officials and critical infrastructure operators. We praise Ukraine's efforts, both in and out of government, to guard against and help their country recover from malicious cyber activity, even as their country is under physical attack. And the way that Ukraine was able to weather and to be resilient against and to bounce back from these malicious cyber attacks, it was a testament of the ability of Ukraine's cyber defenders.
And one more question, let me press you on the SST, if you don't mind. I think you understand why we are asking about, Russia's designation, because another country today recognized Russia as a terrorist state. How far are we from the SST designation? Is it about days, months? You mentioned other countries went through parliamentarian, let's say, process. Are you expecting a message or any bill from the Hill, or what is the process that we're missing here? Are we missing the fact? Cuba last year was designated. That list is how close is Russia to that list based on its actions, current actions in Ukraine?
Well, whether it's this authority or any other authority, we don't detail our internal deliberations. But what I can tell you is that for every authority that's available to us, we look at the law. In this case, it's a law that determines the criteria for designating a state sponsor of terrorism, and we look at the facts. And so we are looking at both. And when it comes to the facts, we are closely looking at what Russia is doing, what Russia has done to the people of Ukraine, to determine which policy tools are most appropriate and responsive to those actions. But again, noting that we have already placed enormous economic and financial pressure on Moscow. It is not just the United States that has done this, but it is countries around the world, dozens of countries across 4 continents that have done so as well. But if there is a tool that is appropriate, as defined in this case or any other case by the law, and that would be effective, again, we will not hesitate to use it. Yes.
On that release of the information on the cyber attacks, now, can you talk about the timing of that? Why was that done now? And also, we know some of those attacks are ongoing. Is there concern that that spillover effect could be felt again in Europe or other places?
Well, these things do take time. What I can say is that we've worked closely with Ukraine, with NATO, with other European partners and other parties since well before Russia's invasion to understand the extent and the impact of Russia's malicious cyber activity against Ukraine. And over time, we sought out ways to meet Ukraine's need for cybersecurity and connectivity support, and will continue to augment that support. But as I said, in the lead up to the invasion, there were a spate of attacks from which Ukraine was able to bounce back quickly. An element of that was the training, was the support that the United States government had provided to our Ukrainian partners well before the invasion, knowing that Ukraine has been a target of malicious cyber activity, including from the Russian Federation, for at least the better part of a decade. Anytime we attribute a cyber activity such as this one, we do so with an eye to protecting sources and methods. We do so with an eye to the implications. But in this case, we're able to attribute it publicly, having gone through a process, having consulted closely with our Ukrainian partners, with our NATO allies, with other European partners and others.
On holding Russia accountable, if you don't mind.
Let me move around just a little bit, Deb.
I was going to switch to the Philippines, if
Sure.
that's okay. How do you expect Marcos's presidency will have an impact on relations with the U.S. and American efforts to curb Chinese influence in the region? And then I have a question on Sudan as well, if that's okay.
Well, your question jumps ahead just a little bit. We're not quite there. We're monitoring the election results, and we look forward to renewing our special partnership and to working with the next administration on key human rights and regional priorities. As I said, we look forward to working with the president-elect once that person is officially named to strengthen the enduring alliance between the United States and the Philippines. It's an enduring alliance that is rooted in a long and deeply interwoven history, shared democratic values and interests, and strong people-to-people ties between our countries. As friends, as partners, as allies, we'll continue to collaborate closely to advance a free and open, connected, prosperous, secure, and resilient Indo-Pacific region. We'll also continue, as I said before, to promote respect for human rights and the rule of law, which is fundamental to U.S. relations with the Philippines and in other bilateral contexts as well. And we're very pleased to welcome Secretary of Foreign Affairs Locsin to Washington this week for the U.S.-ASEAN Summit.
And then
Oh, wait, before you go to Sudan, you know, all signs point to the conclusion that Marcos has won. So do you have any concerns about Bongbong Marcos being the new president of the Philippines?
What I can say from a technical standpoint is that we understand the casting and counting of votes to have been conducted in line with international standards and without significant incident. Again, the counting is still underway. It is not for us to declare a winner. We'll wait for the Philippines election authorities to do that.
I'm just asking you if you have any particular concerns about Marcos' son becoming the next president. We certainly had concerns about Duterte.
We look forward to working with the president-elect on the shared values and the shared interests that have united our countries across generations. Yes, go ahead.
The State Department released a statement last night supporting the tripartite political process in Sudan, but the UNITAM's talks that were supposed to kick off today did not. Is this something the U.S. is concerned about, and what makes you confident this process, which is facing criticism and suspicion from parties in the country, is the right path? And then is there any progress being made on holding security forces accountable for violence against demonstrators?
So we did release a statement last night. We released that statement to underscore our view that the UNITAM's African Union IGAD process is the best way to facilitate an inclusive path forward on Sudan's transition to democracy. Any deviation from that process would undo months of hard work with grassroots civilian activists and human rights defenders geared towards obtaining a broadly acceptable agreement. We do condemn violence against and unjust detentions of peaceful protesters, and we call for those responsible to be held accountable. We likewise condemn undue restrictions on local and international press in Sudan. We are prepared to levy consequences on those who impede or otherwise spoil Sudan's transition to democracy. We won't resume currently paused assistance to the Sudanese government until a credible civilian government is in place. We will, however, continue to support the Sudanese people, including through humanitarian assistance and support for civil society, which has continued uninterrupted since the takeover.
On Sri Lanka, do you have anything new, any updates since yesterday, since the situation has further deteriorated?
Well,
and the sight on view order to shoot site?
Well, we're concerned by the deployment of the military. We stress that peaceful protesters should never be subject to violence or intimidation, whether that's on the part of a military force or a civilian unit. More broadly, we're deeply concerned by reports of escalating violence in Sri Lanka over the past few days. We condemn, as I said before, violence against peaceful protesters. We call for a full investigation, arrest, and prosecution of anyone instigating and involved in acts of violence. We are, as I said before, also closely monitoring the deployment of troops, something that is of concern to us. And we're also closely following political developments in the situation on the ground in Sri Lanka after the resignation of the Prime Minister. We urge the government and political leaders to work quickly to ensure public safety and work together to identify and implement solutions to achieve long-term economic and political stability in Sri Lanka. The government must address the Sri Lankan people's discontent over the economic crisis, including power, food, and medicine shortages, as well as their concerns about the political future of their country.
So in other words, the answer was no. You didn't have anything to add to what
He-
you said yesterday. But
he-
you
he-
decided to go.
He asked about the deployment of military
You
forces.
talked about that yesterday.
Nazir.
Yes, the other question that has, already several wars started in Afghanistan as they predicted. And Ahmad Shah Massoud's son make a group and they started some activity on the other side. Some expert at the United States, Australia, Canada, they get together and make a group to fight against the Taliban, and Afghan people sacrificed in this way. Does United States support some of them, either Ahmad Massoud group or some other expert that they try to do something against Taliban?
We believe the best way to protect and to promote the human rights of all Afghans, including Afghanistan's women and girls, is through dialogue, inclusive dialogue. So we have continued to press the Taliban to take part in a meaningful, inclusive dialogue representative of all of Afghan society, including minorities, women, and girls.
So one of my colleagues sent me a question, if you would like to respond. So she says that US and Pakistan have always had a good education exchange relationship that opens doors to sharing ideas, best practices, innovation, and much more. Do you foresee continuation of such initiatives and efforts to expand relations with Pakistan and the people of Pakistan?
I absolutely do. Our educational exchange program, whether it's with Pakistan, whether it's with any other country, it's a core element of our people-to-people ties. We've been fortunate to have Pakistanis studying here in this country. We have American students who've had the opportunity to study in Pakistan. Those types of exchanges are always helpful, are always valuable as we seek to understand our partners, and as Americans seek to better understand the world, and as we have other countries better understand America. Nike, last question.
Yes, can I ask about South Korea? South Korea's new president officially takes office today. Do you have anything on South Korea's offer to North Korea's to improve North Korea's economy if it abandons its nuclear weapons?
Well, let me start by saying that we do congratulate President Yoon Suk-yeol on his inauguration. The United States ROK alliance, rooted in the close friendship of our people. It's the linchpin for peace, security, and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. We have been and we will continue to coordinate closely with the ROK to address the threat posed by the DPRK's unlawful WMD programs, its ballistic missile program as well, and to advance our shared objective on the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. This is, in fact, an objective that we share. It's an objective we shared with the last ROK government. It's an objective we share with this ROK government, and I know that we look forward to the opportunities ahead over the phone, in person, including when the president travels to the ROK in just a matter of days to continue these discussions with the new ROK administration on how we can advance and promote that goal.
Does the U.S. also assess North Korea will conduct a nuclear test before, sometime before President Biden's visit to Seoul? I'm asking because it's an assessment by South Korea's intelligence chief.
I wouldn't want to put a specific time frame on it, but we've been warning for some time. We've been making public our concern that the DPRK could undertake additional provocations. We've seen 3 ICBM tests. We've seen additional ballistic missile tests, and we've spoken of our concern that the DPRK may mount another nuclear test in the near term. Thank you all very much. Thanks.
Thank you.